From the very moment of your birth, the world starts to shape you, weaving an intricate web of labels around your existence. These labels, your name, your gender, the place where you were born, become the first threads of a mask. But the process doesn't end there. As you grow, society further molds you, teaching you to behave in certain ways, to fit in, to not stand out too much, to be polite, to follow the rules, to never disrupt the flow. Society rewards conformity and punishes authenticity. Imagine the innocence of your early years, when you asked endless questions, when you explored the world around you with awe and curiosity. You were not afraid of standing out or being different. But over time, something shifted. That childlike wonder faded, replaced by the heavy weight of fear, the fear of rejection, the need to belong. Slowly, you were trained to follow, to fit in, and in doing so, you began to lose the essence of who you really are. But what if I told you that the very roles you play today, the good student, the responsible employee, the caring friend, are not really you? They are just masks you wear, carefully constructed by a world that wants you to be predictable, to stay inside the lines. The real you, the version of yourself that was wild, untamed, full of potential, is hidden beneath the layers of these masks, waiting to be awakened. Let me tell you a story, one that reflects the very essence of this struggle. A man, let's call him Adam, lived his life like many of us do, performing his roles with precision. As a child, he was always the good student, the quiet, obedient boy who always followed the rules. As he grew, he became the diligent employee, the dependable friend. On the outside, he appeared successful, well-liked and responsible, but deep inside, something was missing. Adam began to notice a strange emptiness that lingered in his chest, an unshakable feeling that he was merely acting, playing a part. It was as though he was in a play, reciting lines written by someone else, but the real him had long ago been silenced. It was in moments of solitude, when the noise of the world faded away, that the whisper of his true self began to make itself known. It said, "This is not who you are." At first, Adam tried to ignore it. After all, he had everything society told him to want: a stable job, friends who respected him, and a sense of control over his life. But the whisper didn't go away. It grew louder, more insistent. It began to haunt him in the quiet moments, in the spaces between the roles he played. And that is where the real awakening began. Nietzsche's concept of herd morality resonates deeply in this story. Society builds its moral codes around conformity and fear, guiding people to live for the approval of others rather than for their own truth. In Adam's case, his entire life had been shaped by this herd mentality. He had built his identity around what was expected of him, not around who he truly was. When Nietzsche asks, "Are you living your life according to your own desires, or are you simply performing for approval?" He's challenging us to peel back the layers of these masks, to confront the roles we play and to ask, what's beneath all this? And so Adam's journey began not with grand gestures or dramatic changes, but with a quiet, honest confrontation with himself. He began to question everything. He asked himself, who am I when no one is watching? Who am I when I'm not playing a role? These questions, though simple, are the gateway to freedom. They are the first steps toward awakening. As Nietzsche said, the most dangerous form of slavery is the one we don't see. The chains of societal expectation can be invisible, but they are no less real. When you believe that your prison is actually freedom, you stop questioning, you stop evolving. But true awakening, true liberation, begins the moment you see these chains for what they are. So ask yourself, how often have you said or done something simply because society expects you to? How often have you shaped your decisions based on the desire for approval rather than the pull of your own inner truth? These questions, uncomfortable as they may be, are the cracks in your mask. And it is through those cracks that the light of your true self begins to shine. Nietzsche believed that at the core of every human being, there exists a vital force, the will to power. But this is not about dominating others. It's something much deeper. Think of it as an inner drive that compels you to grow, to push your limits, and to become more than you are right now. It's not about staying in your comfort zone. It's about expansion. This drive, the will to power, often feels like a quiet restlessness. It's a subtle urge inside you, telling you to break free from your daily routine and stretch beyond what you already know. But how many of us ignore this call? How many times do we mistake this urge for ambition or even arrogance? In truth, it's your authentic self, struggling to break through all the conditioning, the fears, and the expectations society has placed upon you. Let me tell you a story to bring this to life. Sarah was an artist, but she had lived a life that was anything but authentic to her creative soul. She grew up following the rules, getting the right grades, taking the right job, doing what society expected of her. She wasn't unhappy, but she wasn't alive, not in the way she had once felt when she was a child, drawing for hours without care or concern for the future. It wasn't until Sarah found herself stuck in a job she had grown to dislike that something shifted. Every day she felt the same feeling, an intense discomfort, as though she were choking, suffocating under the weight of what she should be doing. But there was a whisper within her, the voice of her true self, urging her to break free and reclaim her passion for art. At first, Sarah ignored the voice, thinking it was simply a rebellious thought, a temptation to quit everything and risk it all. But over time, the pressure built. The restlessness grew louder. This wasn't a fleeting desire. It was a deep life force urging her to take action. It wasn't until Sarah realized that this was her will to power awakening that she truly began to understand Nietzsche's philosophy. She quit her job. She faced her fears. And Sarah, the artist, returned to her true calling. Through that act of courage, Sarah tapped into the force within her, the creative energy that had been lying dormant, waiting to be expressed. This is what Nietzsche means when he talks about the will to power. It's not about seeking to control others, but about controlling your own life, your own choices, and your own path to authenticity. The will to power is what compels you to evolve, to shed the roles and masks imposed on you by others, and to live a life true to yourself. When was the last time you felt truly alive? Not just entertained, but deeply connected to your essence? Those moments of intense creativity, inspiration, or breakthroughs. They're not accidents. Those are moments when your will to power is in full force. To awaken this power within you, you must focus on what lies beneath the surface, the essence of who you are, not your ego. Your curiosity, your passions, and your inner longings are the clues that lead you to your truest self. The will to power is not something you acquire. It's something you remember. It's always been there, buried under layers of social conditioning. The only thing left is to awaken it.
One of Nietzsche's most radical ideas was his challenge to the traditional notions of good and evil. Society, he believed, had constructed these moral categories to control us, to keep us obedient. What if these ideas were not universal truths, but simply tools used by society to maintain order? What if what we consider good or evil is just a set of beliefs we inherited, not something we've truly chosen for ourselves? Here's where it gets interesting. Nietzsche didn't suggest abandoning morality entirely. He didn't want us to throw away all values, but he did want us to start questioning them, because many of the rules we live by are not our own. They've been handed down to us by others, and often, they do not serve our authentic selves. Take Jack, for example. Jack grew up in a religious household. His parents had strict rules about what was right and wrong, what he should believe, and how he should behave. For much of his life, Jack simply followed these rules, believing them to be universal truths. He was a good person by society's standards. He worked hard, helped others, and tried to follow the rules of right and wrong that he was taught. But as Jack grew older, he began to feel conflicted. He wasn't happy. His life, though full of good things, felt empty. Jack often found himself asking, what if what I'm doing isn't really me? What if the rules I follow aren't the ones I would choose for myself? One day, Jack came across Nietzsche's philosophy. The idea that good and evil were not universal truths, but socially constructed ideas, struck him deeply. He realized that so much of his life had been dictated by the values of others, not by his own inner truth. Jack didn't want to abandon morality entirely, but he began to realize that the moral framework he had been living by wasn't really his. It had been imposed on him. Jack's awakening wasn't about rejecting morality altogether. Instead, it was about creating his own values, that were born from his own experiences, his inner truth, and his desires. He no longer lived to meet the expectations of others. He began to live by his own standards, and in doing so, he found a sense of freedom that he hadn't felt before. Nietzsche's challenge to us is simple but profound. Think for yourself. What is truly good for you may not align with what society defines as good, and that's okay. Living authentically means creating your own values, your own moral compass. It means questioning the rules you've been taught, not out of rebellion, but out of a desire to find your own truth. How many times have you silenced your voice to conform to someone else's expectations? How often have you conformed out of guilt or fear? Nietzsche calls us to break free from these imposed limits, to step into the unknown and create our own values, because when you live authentically, your values will come from within, not from external approval. They will come from your soul, your essence, and your truth. Nietzsche believed that the self is not a fixed identity. It is not something you find and then settle into. The self is a dynamic force, a constant process of becoming. And in this process, chaos is inevitable. But don't fear chaos, it's actually the raw material that transforms you. Emma had always been the type of person who craved stability. She worked hard, followed all the rules, and created a life that appeared neat and controlled. She had a solid job, a predictable routine, and everything seemed to fit into place. Yet, deep down, something was missing. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but there was an underlying feeling of dissatisfaction, an emptiness she couldn't shake. One day, everything changed. Emma lost her job. A relationship she had been in for years ended, and suddenly, her neatly constructed life seemed to fall apart. In that moment, chaos took over. Emma was terrified. She didn't know who she was without her job or her partner. For the first time, she found herself in an unfamiliar space, a place where everything was uncertain. At first, Emma tried to fight this chaos. She wanted to put everything back in its neat boxes, to return to the comfortable, predictable life she once had. But no matter how hard she tried, it didn't work. The more she resisted the chaos, the worse she felt. That's when she remembered something Nietzsche had said: real growth comes from embracing contradictions, doubts, and internal conflict. Emma realized that she had been living in a box all along, and that box had become too small for her. The chaos in her life was not something to fight against, but something to embrace. It was the force that was pushing her to grow, to become something more than she had been. Instead of running from it, she started to lean into the uncertainty. She explored new passions, faced her fears, and slowly began to rediscover herself. This was the beginning of her true transformation. The chaos became the canvas on which she could recreate her life, her identity. She stopped trying to control everything and allowed the messiness of life to shape her. And in doing so, she began to feel more alive, more connected to her authentic self. Nietzsche's philosophy invites us to step away from the need for perfect stability. Life is not about defining yourself in tidy boxes. True growth comes from embracing the chaos, the contradictions, and the uncertainty that comes with change. So, what parts of your life are in chaos right now? Instead of fearing them, what if you saw them as part of your journey toward transformation? What if you let go of the need for control and trusted that the chaos is a necessary part of your evolution? This is where true growth begins, when you allow yourself to become the person you are meant to be, even if it's messy along the way. Nietzsche's idea of the eternal return is one of his most profound challenges to us. He asks us to imagine that we must live our lives exactly as they are, over and over again, for eternity. Every joy, every mistake, every regret repeated eternally. At first glance, this idea might seem frightening. The thought of living the same life, with all its flaws and struggles, forever could easily paralyze anyone with fear. But Nietzsche's point is not to frighten you, it's a call to live more authentically. Thomas was always waiting for the perfect moment to live his life. He put off pursuing his true passions because he thought there would be a better time. He thought that someday things would align perfectly, and he'd be ready to embrace his dreams. But that day never came. He kept putting off his joy, his purpose, and his connections with others because he was always waiting for the future. One night, Thomas stumbled upon Nietzsche's concept of the eternal return. The idea that every moment in his life would repeat forever struck him deeply. For the first time, he realized that his hesitation, his fear of fully embracing his life, had made him miss out on the beauty of the present moment. Thomas asked himself, what if this moment, this very moment, would come back to me forever? Would I still be wasting time waiting for the future? He realized that if he kept living in the future, he would never truly live. The eternal return forced him to reflect on the way he was living. Was it truly how he wanted to live forever? With this realization, Thomas began to change. He started making choices that reflected his deepest desires, pursuing his passions, connecting with others authentically, and taking risks. He no longer waited for the future. He embraced the present with all its imperfections, knowing that every moment mattered. Every decision, every relationship, every small action had the power to shape his life and his future. Nietzsche's challenge with the eternal return is simple but profound. Don't live as if your life is a rehearsal. Live as if every moment matters, because it does. If you knew that every moment would repeat for eternity, would you live differently? Would you embrace your passions, your relationships, and your purpose more fully? This concept invites us to stop waiting for the perfect time and to start living now. It pushes us to live with intention and purpose, to align our choices with our truest desires. The eternal return is a call to live authentically, to embrace every moment as if it were the most important moment of your life, because in a way, it is.